With just under 200 malls or 2,000 malls and fierce competition, South Africa's shopping centre industry has become overtraded, leaving little space for the erection of malls in the future. The country has the 6th largest number of malls in the world, with the United States, Canada, China, Japan and the United Kingdom being the only countries that boast more. Developers are looking for other initiatives in growing the industry, with redevelopment being the core focus. CNBC Africa's Aviwe Mtila has more.
Mid-morning on a clear day over Cresta Shopping Centre in Johannesburg. This is Dirk Prinsloo, Mr. Shopping Mall. He is surely one of a few people in the world who have completed over 3,000 studies on 250 shopping centres. It's a big job in a country that suffers from mall mania. 6th in the world, South Africa has just under 2,000 shopping malls. They're bigger than ever too. Shopping centres have grown from an average of 4 million square metres in 1994 to 23 million square metres today. Despite the tough economic times, there is still the clatter of mall mania.
The growth in the middle markets, and there we refer to LSM 5 to 7. That particular market has grown by more than 4 million households during the last 20 years. So that is contributing to the spend at our shopping centres. And then if you look at the top end of the market, the LSM 8 to 10 plus categories, another 1.6 million households have been added.
South Africa's retail sector has grown so fast that it's now the 3rd biggest contributor to the country's GDP after manufacturing and the finance, real estate and business services sector. Cresta tells the story.
We're outside Johannesburg's Cresta Mall, mid-morning on a Monday. Now the full car parking lots behind me are an indication that even with the tough times economically the country is facing, South Africans are still spending.
The shopping mall expert, Prinsloo, warns that appearances may be deceptive.
The economy is heavy on all consumers at the moment. That's why you'll find that people are spending wisely. They're looking more for specials. They probably shop less frequently. They still visit the centre, but not necessarily to buy every time. There's a lot of browsing taking place. Outing, a visit to a shopping centre is also an outing. So people will come here during weekends, spend 3 to 4 hours in this particular mall, but not necessarily spending a lot of money.
These are the foot soldiers of South African shopping malls. In their thousands, they turn up everywhere, from Cape Town to Messina. They are the judge and the jury when it comes to the success or failure of a shopping centre. They say the rand in their pocket is struggling to keep up with market prices.
Shopping malls are a bit expensive for me. I'm a student, so I prefer my stalls, you know, like at the Brightwater Commons markets and all that.
They just opened the food court this side, so there's quite a few shops where a lot of specials happening.
I've just been retired, so yes, I am feeling the economic strains, but things work out.
Mostly here there's 50% off for now since Bavula Lama Shopolao, so that is why we're always here.
I know it's bad and I was here to just pay off some of the few things that I have to pay, and this coming month is way too long, so yeah.
This has forced some shops to shrink. Take Estral Books. This shop has been at Cresta Shopping Centre for 17 years. The last few years have been so slow that the shop had to cut back to save rent.
Obviously it started slowing down due to recession purposes from, I'd say, 2013 onwards. That has forced us to move out of our massive store that we had, and we downscaled to this one right now for the past 3 years now.
Infrastructure is another issue. It seems most malls are planned and the roads are planned long afterwards.
On a Saturday, especially your peak hour between 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock, you will experience some problems at especially your super regional centres. The roads leading to that particular centre is sometimes clogged. Sometimes you find it difficult to get off the highway into the centre.
It is a challenge because there's a bit of a disconnect between the developments and maybe the authorities, governments or local authorities. And sometimes the funders of developments pay for the portions that they develop, and they place new development in an area where there is nothing. And if the infrastructure is not there yet, it places huge pressure on that. But one must understand that development breeds development. So if you go and build a mall in an area where there's nothing else, over time the business sort of migrates towards that. And that draws a lot more interest in the area, and then the infrastructure follows.
Another element often forgotten is the taxi rank. There is a security guard at every mall in the country who relies on public transport. This creates the clutter of unplanned taxi ranks on the side of the roads.
Sometimes there's also a bit of a disconnect between what government requires and what private sector will install in something like that. In the new mixed-use developments that we see a lot across South Africa, there's a lot of focus on that. Let's deal with the whole of society, because otherwise we put pressure on infrastructure that it wasn't designed for. You know, historically, the taxi stops where there isn't a stopping place for a taxi. Why? Because there is nothing provided. What must he do? He must stop where he finds the spot, and that frustrates the rest of the traffic. So design is key.
A drawing board in Johannesburg. Donald McGilvery is one of the many architects who designed these malls. He has been in the industry for 20 years and is a partner at MDS Architecture. This is a company that designed the Mall of Africa.
You can see by this little map, for example, there's the North African desert, and that would be one theme for one of the courts. The Great Lakes, for example, would be another theme for one of the courts. The tropical forest, which would be Central Africa, Southern Africa, which would be based around the mineral wealth, and then West Africa, which would be around the oil. And that was the main idea behind theming the Mall of Africa and actually creating this African identity that we wanted to create with the mall.
But when the Mall of Africa went from blueprint to bricks, there was a clutter all around. So what does he think about the chaos on the roads leading to the Mall of Africa in its opening? Chaos that left many questioning the lack of planning for mall infrastructure.
With regards to the Mall of Africa on opening day, it was obviously a very unusual situation, the fact that it attracted so much attention. I think also people tended to get into the Mall of Africa via the routes that they knew. So they would have taken the Allendale off-ramp, or they would have come in from the Kyalami side. I think Mall of Africa has been designed within the context of an overall master development for office buildings, for residential sectors within that whole area. And as such, there's quite a few different routes to get into the Mall of Africa.
The word from the drawing board is that from now on, it will be catch-up.
The developer who's doing a shopping centre or a mall or a development has to comply with certain infrastructure requirements. Where it sometimes falls short is that they have to comply to infrastructure and road upgrades, etc., within a certain distance of the mall. But then the roads around that, going into that new section that has to be developed, very often isn't upgraded either. So that's where, in my opinion, it tends to fall short a bit, and congestion tends to occur, is leading into those areas.
The Mall of Africa opened on the 28th of April with 300 shops. It is vast.
With 131,000 square meters, the Mall of Africa is the biggest in the continent in terms of being complete in the first phase. Now, the entrance behind me is just one of 26 entrances in and out of the mall.
The owners say they are happy with the 45,000 people that come here every day. More than they expected. Morne Wilkin is the man who owns the mall.
We do look at the economy, but we take a long-term view on property. I think you can't just look at it short-term. Maybe you're going to have an economic downturn for a few years, but if you look at an asset class as property, you take a long-term view. Just to take Mall of Africa as an example, we bought the land from the Mia family in 2008. We only started the construction in 2013. We completed in 2016. So that's actually an 8-year period before you have a product in the ground.
Wilkin defends the mall over the public transport question.
We've got a taxi holding facility. If you go on the western side of the Allendale, we've got a holding facility. You can get right from the holding facility across Bridal Bridge right into the mall. And then we went further, which is very unique as well. We've got two taxi drop-off areas on the sides of the mall, on the western side and the eastern side, which is quite unique in South Africa. So the people can drop off and get access to the mall. So we have catered for that, and that was something we wanted to make sure that actually works quite well.
South Africa's retail industry has been getting heavy international attention since 2010, with a large number of big names coming into the country's shopping centres. This is good and bad. Amid fierce competition, there are fears that the market is overtraded.
The next phase of retail in South Africa, and we already see it happening already, is going to be refurbishments. I think a lot of developers now are, because of the competition, because there's so many big malls out there in South Africa, I think developers are taking existing shopping centres. The example you mentioned earlier on is the Four Ways Mall, and they're going to be redoing those malls, refurbishing them.
There is a limitation on future potential new malls. I think there's always redevelopment opportunities in malls. I don't think there's a lot of scope for a lot of new malls in South Africa. What we have been doing as a TAC is we have been expanding into Africa. We've got a fund together with Hyprop and Atterbury where we're actually doing retail developments into Africa. And then we also have started something with Atterbury Europe where we focus on shopping centers in Eastern and Central Europe. That's to acquire some as well as developing.
Despite these fears, they keep coming. For a best part of the century, every time you see a South African with money to spend, you will likely see a mall. Aviwe Mtila for CNBC Africa, Johannesburg.